Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And for those of you who are joining us live, happy Community Day 2024. This is our second annual Community Day, a day for us to connect as a larger group, to talk about Airsoft, to hang out live on our live streams and in voice chat, and just generally enjoy the awesome community that we have all created together around our Discord and the Storm Riders Foreign Legion. So thank you all for being a huge part of this with us. It's so much fun to be able to interact with you.
It is a really cool thing for sure.
Yeah. And so today, Pat and I are going to talk a bit about our latest experiences playing Airsoft this year, some of the things that have happened and changed in the last little while, and some of the things that we're excited about in the future. But before we get into that, I realize that some of you might be actually new or fairly new to our podcast and our community more generally. And I think about people like Huck and KSK Kevin, who joined the Discord pretty recently. So they might not be aware of some of the lore and history of our group. So thankfully, Matt, the Storm Wizard, has prepared a short history of the Storm Riders Discord that he has asked me to read on the podcast for community, which I think is a great way to get everyone up to speed on the absolute facts surrounding the Storm Riders Discord.
Based on my knowledge of Matt, this will be 100% factual. There will be no edits or erratum whatsoever.
Yes. So it starts 1907. The first commercial plastic bakelite becomes available. Then in 1908, Chaz meets an English immigrant who worked as a knocker-upper, a person who used a tube to shoot dried peas at windows to wake people up. He immediately conceives that the two should be connected and builds the first LPA airsoft gun, low pressure airsoft gun. In 1984, Phil is born, calls hit when his umbilical cord is cut. 2 weeks later, in 1984, 2 weeks into deployment life, Phil calls for cover fire, and Pat is born with a machine gun in his hand. In 2003, Matt buys his first clear plastic spring-powered airsoft pistol and will use this to brag that he's been airsofting for a long time in the future. 2004, Phil discovers airsoft is a thing and immediately wishes he had $10,000 Canadian to buy a FAMAS.
That's factual. That was true. I was there.
Yeah. 2006, Phil buys his first blaster later that year becomes the premier airsofter in Newfoundland, Canada. He is also the only airsofter in Newfoundland, Canada. 2009, this is factual, Phil, Pat, and Cal form the Storm Riders. Less factual, Canada's finest airsoft team. This reputation holds strong to modern days. 2013, Storm Riders establish M81 Woodland as their official team uniform, which is true, causing a resurgent popularity in God's Plaid amongst airsofters emulating their favorite team. Not sure. 2017, John learns of the Denison Smock. He shortly becomes the foremost expert in this field of 7 people. 2016, a bunch of friends invite Matt airsofting, marking his first real foray into the sport. Since there's no joke, I will assume this also is factual.
We hope.
2018, Ben the Australian, also known as Frosty, discovers airsofting, immediately dedicating his life to traveling globally to commit this crime. 2020, Tullen discovers airsoft, concusses himself during, his first game.
Ouch.
September 2020, the first episode of Call Your Hits goes online, which is true, marking the beginning of the longest running Airsoft podcast. Nope, sorry, I misread. Marking the beginning of long-running Airsoft podcasting. I don't know if we're the longest one, but yeah. 2021.
If not, we'll just duel the others and take the title.
Yes, there can be only one. 2021. Pat first tinkers with HPA, which blossoms into a full-blown addiction. Many years later, friends will find him huffing from a high-pressure air tank with Chaz and Matt, collectively known as HP Airheads.
Send help.
2021. Talon Tallinn starts collecting Finnish surplus. The Finland military will ultimately rely on this income stream to supplement national defense. February 2021. Jordan Glickman discovers airsoft and immediately spends $140,000 US on gear, $14,000 of that being spent on night vision. March 2021, Jordan becomes the first most trained military in the world by man hours based only on ready ups. And then in May of 2021, Jordan plays his first airsoft game, establishing himself as the third best machine gunner in US history. I'd be curious to know, Matt, who the other two are.
I'm going to hazard a guess that Matt's one of them.
In December of 2021, Jordan finally accepts his destiny after Arizona buys him his first LMG, and he never holds a rifle again.
Thank you, Arizona.
In July 2022, Flubberter, first place airsoft, becomes unsatisfied with how his local field is run. Flub is one of our Discord community members from France. February 2023, Matt coins the term Plasto Blasto as another term for airsoft. The term goes viral and is preferred by 80% of the airsoft/Plasto Blasto population. You just don't know them all. They don't play at your field. March 2020.
Some of them do.
Yes, some of them do. And they prefer Plasto Blasto. March 2023, Desert Fox Events Battle for LA 5 marks the first Storm Riders Foreign Legion event, an event where several members of the Storm Riders Discord community traveled cross-country in the US to an event solely to play together. Enemy forces are destroyed to the last man. September 2023, the first Storm Riders Discord Community Day is held. That was last year. Fun is had by all. 7 billion people are confused why they had such a fun day. September of 2023 as well. After stewing in his dissatisfaction, Flub becomes a ref. The average quality of airsoft referee raises 3% with this one contribution alone. Then skipping forward a little bit, June 2024, American Milsim Iron Horse 6 is the first cross-global Storm Riders Foreign Legion event, including original Storm Riders from Newfoundland and Foreign Legion members from Australia, Canada, and the US. Due to Storm Riders Foreign Legion contributions, CDF is victorious 3 hours into a 14-hour game. This is kind of factual. Cost cries so many tears the entire state of Georgia has elevated humidity. Reports that Georgia was humid before the event are caused by the Mandela effect. August 2024, Border War 16 marks the first European deployment of the Storm Riders Foreign Legion. The enemy is devastated by their effectiveness and swagger. Storm Riders Foreign Legion forces were reported to have, quote, walked their objectives across the corpses of their enemies, unquote. Krancis 2177, the Immortal Storm Wizard and the Powered Air Technology, PAT, Airsoft Cyborg, face off at Air Games 90. Both are destroyed when a tracer BB punctures the PAT's nuclear power plant. The explosion wipes the humidity from Georgia, making the states more livable despite the radiation.
It's good to know what my future holds.
And then 1.7 times 10 to the power of... Sorry. 1.7 times 10 to the power of 106 CE, Common Era. Phil watches the heat death of the universe, bans the universe from the field for not calling their hit. So, God, I'm going to live a good, long trillion. I don't even know how many that
Phil
is
eternal.
years. Yeah, I am eternal, clearly. Yeah. So,
that
Matt,
was wonderful.
thank you for creating... thank you for creating that that timeline of the Discord. Many of those things are factual, if a little bit on the silly side, but hopefully you all enjoyed that. And I mean, it's crazy to me to think that despite all the joking and stuff in there, aside from Jordan's night vision, which is 100% factual, this is all you guys. Like these are the people who we've interacted with, gotten to know over the last couple of years. And we're just so grateful and fortunate to have you in our community, be able to interact with you, and have you as a very important part of our airsoft lives. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking care of this. And
I'm going to throw this out there because I know we have some artists and people who can do this sort of stuff with actual skill, unlike me, on the Discord. But I am open to the idea of there being a Pat the Airsoft Cyborg t-shirt, and I'm open to wearing it to games forever. Just so we're clear.
You heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. If someone wants to do the Pat Cyborg, and as a reminder, Pat stands for Powered Air Technology Airsoft Cyborg. You are this is your official permission to do so.
Contributing to my airsoft foolishness is always welcome.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into the meat of the episode. I think for the last little while, we've been airsofting in a couple of different ways that haven't been super typical or necessarily, or there have been things that we've been striving towards. In your case, I think Pat in particular, with respect to like running a squad support weapon replica, and also having the opportunity to do so at an event where that actually is meaningful, as opposed to just sort of any sort of event that at all of our previous events anyone could use full auto. At this event only SSWs could. And so this was a really this was new for you and something you had worked on. And spoiler alert, it didn't work perfectly, but now you're at a position where your LMG is where you need to be, thanks to a very expensive box mag. So
Absolutely.
what can you tell us about your experience running an LMG during during a game that, objective based, where it's consequential?
So, yeah, I guess first up, cue the your eternal reward scene from Aladdin, right? I finally have the thing working after I don't know, a million years. Matt can fact check me on the time frame. He'll cover that successfully, I'm sure. But yeah, so I guess first things first. Like I had it shooting as I wanted it to, other than the box mag that I had been using, which was an A&K box mag, functioning essentially terribly.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, unfortunate. I really would have preferred for the box mag to be working at the time, but I decided I was going to play. I'd committed to playing it for that game, and I really kind of wanted to see how effective or ineffective it would be running it out of just mid cap mags with 100, 200 rounds. And the answer for the context of a game where my opponents weren't allowed to use full auto was shockingly effective.
Mm-hmm.
I had a tremendous amount of fun. I mean, I usually have fun helping run operation games. It's been a really long time since I got to play one. And essentially at the beginning of the day, Cal placed me on the upper floor of the old two-story building. And his sort of, it was sort of, he sent myself and three other people to the village. Was like, take the village, win that firefight, and then just prevent the enemy from advancing into the third of the field nearest to it. And my instructions were essentially to get up high wherever I could, which really just meant that spot. There's a limited amount of up high in the village, and provide, an element that prevented the enemy team from advancing past where we were, and if we weren't being engaged at an even point, to just sort of provide eyes for my commander. Mm-hmm. So my functions became being a hard, just limit of advance for the enemy team through roughly a sixth of the full field that we were playing on, and to essentially use the fact that I had a radio to go, hey, 2/3 of the enemy team is going this way, right?
Yeah.
And providing out, I had sufficient line of sight to provide out a call out for like, oh, the enemy team's respawning. We should be aware of that, stuff like that. So that was pretty useful. And that half of it is in line with my normal role when I play with our team. Like I end up being a spotter fairly often because I've got a magnified optic and a long range replica. Mm-hmm. The LMG did not have a magnified optic, but just sufficient height over the rest of the field serves somewhat adequately. And I guess the next sort of question was, wow, how effective is full auto when you have a big HPA tank attached to it? And for those who haven't run or like played around with an M249 airsoft replica, feeding Stanag mags into it is not what I'd call stellar.
Hmm.
Like, it's not a comfortable, quick, efficient reload. It's sort of a, this sort of works.
It's expedient, but not exactly what you want to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and so, yeah, it turns out that the LMG can reach about as far as most of the non-heavily upgraded DMR rifles that were available, or replicas, I should say, that were available to the players on the opposing team, which meant that they had a very limited set of options that could even attempt to remove me
Yeah.
because I, you know, if you'll forgive me a little hyperbole, cut a swath through anyone they sent after me. You know, and I wasn't particularly for the people who either have a lot of experience like playing into people running Polar Star LMG stuff. Phil at the beginning of the game had sort of talked me into dropping the rate of fire down to what an actual M249's rate of fire is, or like the middle of roughly what their actual rate of fire is,
Hmm.
which seemed sensible to conserve the relatively limited amount of shots that I had available, and also um, I think, Phil's partial argument was that it sounds badass at the lower rate of fire. And
Listen, I will die on this hill. I think that airsoft replicas, especially if you are firing full auto and you have like an amplifier on the front or something like that, and it's louder. I think about like Cal's Tippin, which is super loud. Like I I firmly believe that like a lower rate of fire replica that instead of going like Bert just goes like clack 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 clack. I think it's so much more intimidating. It's so much more badass. And you raise a good point too. Like there's the ammo conservation piece, not only because I mean ammo conservation in general is pretty effective, but or is useful, I should say. But in your case, you literally had to do that because you did not have a box that would feed you, 1,000 rounds or something like that.
yeah, and I did. I mean, this is unusual for me. Like, I've played 3 hour games where I haven't ripped through all the mags I'm carrying.
Mm-hmm.
And I burned through my entire load twice and a little bit. Um, and considering that the gun went down on me at the 2.5 hour mark, that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Um, and a substantial amount of it was like, one of the questions, I mean, really the biggest question other than did you have fun, for people on the opposing team was like, was I effective, like in the sense of, did you feel that I was a problem, did you feel like removing me from where I was a pain in the ass? And the answer is pretty unequivocally yes. Like, we did not want to approach where you were, we just started going around you because we couldn't do anything. um I'm like, I think pretty factually that if the opposing team had um, like a really upgraded bolt action or more really upgraded DMRs, they might have been more able to move me.
Mm-hmm.
But um, like, I wasn't getting first round hits at 200 feet, but at 200 feet, I was absolutely effective at just putting people's heads down. And frankly, if the cover they were behind wasn't solid enough, just yeah, it takes 30
Yeah.
rounds, but they leave.
And there's a couple of times where I was poking around the field and I just was just making sure everyone was having fun, and like even if they were getting literally hosed by you, people were still having fun, which is great. But a couple of times when I went up to you, like you weren't particularly paying attention to utilizing the cover that you had available to the best of your ability. And it wasn't a question of like you didn't care, or you definitely didn't. It's not a question of you didn't know. You definitely knew better. And it's not that you didn't care. It was just not necessary. Like
Yeah, I mean, there were
I
points
was
where
standing next to you and there wasn't any fire coming in, right? Like not effective anyway,
yeah, there were
right?
points where I was being engaged by like 3 or 4 guys. And in those situations, like one of the one of the first lessons I figured I had to figure out while I was playing in practice was just like, how do I shoulder transition this thing, especially with a mag sticking out the side of it that's not really supposed to be there from an ergonomic point of view.
Yeah.
Um, and like, how do I use this effectively offside? And the answer basically came down to like, it doesn't have any recoil, so I'm just going to chop the stock in and just
Yeah, legit.
manhandle it.
Yeah.
But when I was getting engaged, I was tucked into a doorway, and so the only thing peeping out really was like whatever of me I needed to see you and an LMG. And
Hmm.
I think like that heavy volume of cover plus the heavy volume of fire definitely did not make things work out for people who were trying to get rid of me.
Hmm.
Um, I and like credit to the other team, like they didn't just feed guys into that problem. They approached it a couple of times and were like, I think we're just going to leave Pat there where he's happy and we'll not deal with him. And I think that
Yeah.
caused them problems in terms of, hey, where can you go? Um, and in that sense, I feel like it was really an effective use of what I had going.
Yeah, I would
um,
certainly say so. I think it was interesting to me because it was really the first time that you've played a game where you haven't really played a command role either.
yeah, it's
Like it,
been a
yeah,
really long time since I played any kind of
and got
multi-hour
dossed around by
game.
someone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And like I checked in with Cal a couple of times, and there was a point in the day where he was like, "We don't really need you to move up, but you can move up if you want to, or you can just stay there and keep doing what you're doing."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Well, if you don't need me right now, and where I am is a place you might need me in 5 minutes, I guess I'll stay here."
Yeah.
Um, so that was what happened, and it was what worked out. And I know the commander of the opposing team sent like they had a guy in a ghillie suit with a sniper rifle to try to extract me at one point. I'm not sure. Like I know he came back a couple of times. I'm not sure if he just if he checked in each time or if he just got sort of focused on trying to get me out of there. But that didn't work out super well for him.
Yeah.
Um, just in the sense of like, yeah, he had really good camo and he had a pretty decent piece of kit, a pretty decent replica to shoot at me with, but he he had to get too close to do it effectively. Um,
And he's by himself,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if there was someone else distracting you by shooting at you from a different direction or whatever, that would be a different
yeah.
conversation
That
as
would have been
well.
a
Yeah.
better, a sort of a better tactical play, I think. But yeah, so there were a couple of points where it was 3 or 4 guys, and I pushed them off, and there were a couple of points where it was 1 or 2 guys with slightly more accurized replicas, or one guy with a sniper rifle, and yeah, it worked really, really well.
Mhm.
And I mentioned earlier that it went down, so partway through the day, like I said, 2.5 hours in, it started jamming on me, and that's the bulkier hop up that I'm using is fiddly about hop up buckings. So the internet tells me that it's that. I think I'm probably gonna at some point buy another of the hop up bucking that I was using. I think it's that specifically some of my older mags are kind of crappy,
Mhm.
and they fed into the LMG not very well. So it might be that issue because the issue started once I was using them.
Mhm.
It could be just that, yeah, the hop up wasn't very good, but I also think, like, in a general sort of sense, as an airsoft replica, the 249 is not meant to be like reloaded a ton, and it definitely didn't love some of the mags I was feeding. So currently, I've got a Prometheus purple rubber in there, and that's working great.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I'm probably I'm currently leaning to just like cleaning that up so that I can use it as a flat hop rubber, and then air hopping it and just being silly. And like, yes, that'll burn the air hop rubber relatively quickly because of the amount of rounds I'm going to be shooting. But like I was using an MR hop rubber previously, and like that was getting me the kind of performance I want. Like I don't need this thing to be completely shot to shot, nail driver accurate. It's a machine gun.
Yeah.
It's the reach and the flat trajectory and the relative smaller cone of fire that I want. Um, so yeah, like it turns out that using an LMG in a field where no one else is allowed to, or not no one else, but where like a limited number of players have access to those, and most people are shooting on semi, makes it really effective. That like I feel like probably most airsofters have experienced that situation where you're sitting in a position and people are shooting at you, and it's just like, oh my god, there's so much fire coming in, and it feels really loud, and I feel like I just want to keep my head down.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, I didn't feel like that with 4 guys shooting at me on semi when I was shooting back on auto, and I think they did. um,
Yeah.
so that's pretty cool. It's cool enough that I went home from the game, um, and popped on the Discord and was like, guys, does anyone like what can I do about this box mag situation? I'm super frustrated feeding this thing on LMG mags or on AEG like standard mid cap mags.
Mhm.
Um, and you guys are gonna have to forgive me. I'm not actually. I went back and tried to check, but I couldn't find the message. Someone recommended that I check out a company in Florida called Bull Gear, who make fancy box mags and box mag inserts, and are doing pretty cool stuff with like a fancy, complicated kind of 3D polymer that is quite durable. And to be completely honest, like he sent me the thing, and I looked at the price, and I was like, ooh. And then I went and watched their promotional video, and was like, what?
Yeah.
um, and so I messaged my airsoft conscience, Phil, who usually is a sensible boy and is like, don't buy that. I think I definitely once a month I message Phil some sort of airsoft gun that I'm thinking about buying because it's for
Yep.
sale at like halfway reasonable prices. Like, Pat, stop.
It's true. It's
Some
true.
some months more often than once a month.
Yeah.
He's wonderful for my willpower, and his only response was buy
Yeah.
it.
And like the
um,
reason why, like in terms of why I would care about this versus like another replica is like, well, you've been trying to get this LMG up for so long. And also I've heard through many different people that the box mag is like the stupidest part of the LMG, or like it's a real headache for a lot of different players. I'm like, okay, really, you can try getting this to work. You can bang your head against this all you want, or in this case, you can literally just throw money at this problem and fix it, right? And my estimation was based on what I'd seen on the Discord and what we had talked about, that it's very unlikely that this is not going to solve the problem. So let's just go ahead and put this behind us. Let's spend the money, or in your case, spend the money. You have it. We know there's some stuff we are both aware of. We're like, it's fine. So just go ahead. And yeah, so you might have to not spend, buy some more minis that you're not going to paint for 2 years for a little while.
ouch.
Uh,
It's at
but
least
like,
three
you know what
years.
I
Let's be
mean?
real.
Like, just reprioritize for a very short period of time and just get this done. That way you don't have to worry about this. And I think as we can, look at like the next op that's coming up, which you are going to be playing, and I'm not going to be playing. I'm going to be running, I should say. You're going to be playing it, like, and classes are going to be a thing. This is going to be to your advantage to have, right?
And I mean, like, it's um it was sort of, yeah, like I had sufficient room in the dumb things budget for the next couple of months to front load it there and just whatever, not a problem. It's not a I'm um too old to be doing the like ramen diet for a month because I wanted to buy an airsoft toy. But in this case, yeah, I can afford it, no problem, great, done. And
Mm.
so I gotta give like genuine huge props to the company. So they had a sale on. I placed the order through the jigs and the reels of either it being too late at night when I placed the order and me being stunned, or their website having an issue. They aren't sure either. It didn't put in a component that I needed, so I needed the box mag. And then if you're running it on a HPA engine, you need to run it on a little trigger control unit. Um, Essentially because their box mag needs to be run on an AEG battery. Like they recommend an 11.1 for it, and having run it, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Um, and they had a sale on, which is part of why it was like, yeah, do it now. Like, why would you wait?
Mm.
The best case scenario here is you buy it. The worst case scenario is you like wait 3 weeks, you buy it, and you have to pay an extra 20%, 15%,
Yeah.
right? Like, cool. And so I reached out to them and was like, hey, dumb thing happened. Not only did they throw that into the order, they gave me and charged me for it. They gave me the discount on that, even though the sale had ended. Um, they also got back to me and were like, "Hey, we've done a couple of like things to tune up the process. We're making a batch of them this week. Would you mind waiting, and we'll send you the nicer one?" Which was super
Super
cool of them.
cool. Yeah.
Like, and my answer naturally was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll wait a couple of days for a better one." And so it arrived. I didn't actually think it was going to arrive for the game. The postal service was like, "Yeah, no, you're going to get it on Monday," and I was fairly irritated. And it showed up on the Friday. And anyone who's done airsoft teching definitely knows, like, okay, so I got to wire parts of this into my gun can be a pain.
Hmm.
It took 30 minutes. And 10 of
Wow.
those minutes were me not understanding the order I was supposed to plug it in and having to go watch a video about that. Um, Super user friendly. Um, you know, uh, Extremely easy to set up. It holds 4,000 rounds, which is nonsense.
Just a bag. Just pour the
Yeah, no,
bag,
it
the whole bag in.
literally, that is what I did. I poured a bag. Um, Hazy P, good to see you in the chat. I poured a bag of BBs into it. And then I went to the field and shot a bag of BBs at people. And so currently, like I said, it's running Promi Purple. So it's not getting the flat hop trajectory, which, like, I'm too used to. I'm
Yeah.
spoiled. But it was still, like, I was playing that against people who had full auto and it felt unfair. Like, um, I got quite a lot of kills with it, which is sort of odd because the intent was like, oh, I'll push out and support, and it's like, or I'll just keep shooting people. Okay, whatever works.
Yeah.
So
And you can put it on semi-auto, so you can use that in the village and everything. Like now, there's no reason for you to use anything
yep,
else
yep, I
for
can,
like a day. Yeah.
yeah, totally. I can just, it can be the only gun I bring. And I mean, some weekends it's going to be the only gun I bring. Um, to clarify, I'm putting
Well,
on full auto. I can, well, yeah, I might bring the other one too. But like, I can, the FCU allows me to set it so that one trigger pull equals one BB,
mhm,
rather than one trigger pull equals auto.
yeah.
So yeah, it functionally does a whole lot right now. It's very, very comfortable. It's very, very fun to shoot. And like, after a whole lot of my time and a whole lot of episodes of Call Your Hits where I've gone like, oh yeah, this is the state of the LMG. Currently, the state of the LMG is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it is working. It is doing what I want. The only thing it needs is like a tiny bit of tinkering that will take me like an hour that I know easily how to do, or I might just buy an MR proper and put that in, and see how that works, and see if the jamming issue is resolved by just having a mag that feeds properly.
And what I'm
Um,
excited about is because the
yeah, my forearms are definitely going to get a little bigger. The front end of it is
yeah,
definitely heavier than the front end of the M27. Like, it's interesting because you can feel it get lighter as you pull the trigger, but
that depends how long you hold the trigger for. I was going to say though, I'm really excited because now that Pat has a working LMG as well as his M27, which wasn't not working, it's just it also is working.
yes,
There
yes,
are
all things are working.
two, yeah, there are two fully working airsoft replicas that Pat has, which means that anytime that he plays, I can use one or the other because he can't use both at the same time,
Uh,
which is very exciting for
so,
me in a very selfish way.
so on that note, one of the things that I have concluded about this process is that I probably do want to buy a a second regulator, because that way I can just set one for each of the replicas.
Definitely,
Like, I've
yeah.
already got multiple HPA bottles, so that is sort of, that's the next thing I'm going to buy for Airsoft, and I'm probably going to pick that up within like the next month, just as a quality of life thing.
Yeah, because it
Um,
will simplify
yeah,
things.
absolutely. But like,
Yeah.
I don't think I can dual wield those.
No, I certainly not. But that's why you got a good buddy to help you out
Yeah, exactly.
with that. And I mean, like the same thing for me. Like I know you have a spare bottle. I have a spare bottle. So it's like when you're going to a game, or especially like some of the, which we'll talk about in a second, like longer events or whatever, having that second bottle stash, you can do it. Like, yes, is it a CF tank or whatever? No, but still, is it heavier? I mean, yeah, but like not meaningfully, right? Because
Well,
I have a large CF tank and a regular aluminium bottles or steel bottle, whatever it is, and so they weigh roughly the same. Just one is bigger, but like for our purposes, especially at like frontline,
yeah,
it's not really material,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And like, I mean, frankly, one of the things that I'm definitely going to do for the next op, bench, ours are like 3,500 psi,
No, it's 4,500 and
4,500,
68 cubic
68. There we
centimeters,
go. So
6,800,
it's
like
like,
whatever it's. Yeah.
football sized. Um, you
Oh,
know,
he's using liters. I don't know what to tell you about liters.
yeah, I'd have to go grab mine. I'm literally, the information that you want is written on it. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for people who can do math. um, so yeah, I'm almost certainly going to ask to borrow your CF bottle, because I don't think I'm going to have problems feeding the LMG BBs in November, and having a second tank so that if I run low, I can feed the LMG air is desirable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's just as a side note, like part of the reason that the Storm Riders are a thing as a team is because we wanted to be airsoft together and stuff. Because for Pat and I, and for Cal as well, like it's always been like whatever we have collectively. Like Pat has stuff and I have stuff. But like if I'm like, hey Pat, I really want to run the LMG today, he's like, done. Right? We
Yeah,
don't. There's no question. And so
totally.
same thing with like all the tanks and all our gear and like it's like like redundancies across individuals, not just for yourself. And we have our own redundancies as well. Well, we have our own redundancies, and we also have redundant kit to help support us. But like that was part of it too, right? That's the whole
Yeah,
the
it's
whole
it's a
reason we
very,
do that, right?
and like this is one of the benefits of the mentality of like the people on my team are people like I'm not gonna go look for people who are really like super hardcore or even necessarily awesome at airsoft. I want people who are like trustworthy and fun to hang out with.
Yes.
Like I want the kind of people who I want to go to their wedding, to use a recent example.
Yeah, or
um
someone who you would like you hand like a replica or something, be like, here, use this, and you don't even think about it. It's
yeah,
like,
exactly, right.
yeah,
Like
go ahead and
it's
use that,
completely a
right?
non-issue, and like
Yeah.
um it's definitely a privilege to have all these people on our team who are
Mhm.
fantastic to play with and who have that same like like if I want to run an AK the next time I play, uncategorically, like if I can just go to one of our group chats and go, hey guys, I'd like to run an AK, someone loan me an AK for next weekend, and I will
Yeah, and you'll
I
get like three
I
thrown at you.
yeah, like I will have a choice. All of them will be great,
Yeah.
and it'll be super chill. So it's very much a like share and share alike kind of approach with our kit.
Yeah.
um and one of the cool things additionally about this is like, okay, so not only is my LMG uh chugging along doing the thing, um Josh's LMG is he has gone the other direction and made it a much more mechanically better AEG LMG,
Hmm.
which was probably saner in a number of ways, but like I don't have any regrets now that it's working. But he like he was around when I was trying the Volkswagen, was like, so I need one of those. Uh,
Yeah.
and so once that gets squared away, I actually haven't been talking to him to ask if he's done it. We'll be in a situation where, yeah, our team will be able to field a couple of frankly shockingly good DMRs, two really quite optimized LMG replicas, and you know, uh, to be honest with you, I feel that as a team working together, we're going to be pretty terrifying in that
Well,
context.
yeah, and it's very unfortunate because I think like for us to be able to utilize that, we're probably going to have to travel somewhere else because here in our local community, and it's nothing against the people who we play with, because I think we have a lot of very skilled individuals in our community, people who are really quite good at
Oh man,
airsoft.
they're then one thing I absolutely love about like this year and last year's sort of crop of new players and like players who are returning and players who have been around for ages is like we really do definitely have a community where there are plenty of people who are better than me,
Yeah,
and I love
yeah.
having that encouragement to grow, and I love being able to talk to those people and be like, hey, any suggestions, and learn.
I think I think about some of the local guys like Tanner and like Aaron, Jacob, like guys like who are really good and they have a lot of skill. Or even like Elizabeth and stuff. I mean, she refs most of the time, but she's really good. Like these are people who have a lot of skill. The challenge that we are abutting against almost every time is that individually, many of those players I would say are better. They're better than me. Like full stop. Like I'm not a terrible airsofter by any stretch of the imagination, but these guys are like really aggressive. They play really hard. The challenge that I think we're coming across in the community that hopefully we can sort of build around is the lack of coordination between players. And we saw that today. We played a game. It was 5 on 14, right? And we were able to like basically hold them back all throughout the game. They had unlimited lives, right? All they had to do was cap a flag, and they couldn't, right? Because we were so coordinated, we were working so well together. Just as a very easy example, like this was during the live stream today, where I was like, they had to raise the flag on the bus on the hill by the oil tank. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
And so I was on the front of the bus, and I had my hold on that flag. And so if anybody put their hand up to try and raise it, I would shoot their hand, which sucks, but I mean that's the game, right?
Ow.
But I was completely exposed on my right side. I could only do that because I knew that I had ET and I had Matt who were to my right holding that line of defense. So while they were there, nothing was going to shoot me. So I was in a really good position, right? To be able to exploit that because I had coordination with my teammates, right?
Yeah. And like, that
So like,
that comfort
yeah.
of, yeah, like I know what I'm doing and I know what these guys are doing and they've got my back is super useful.
But it's that, when you think about like going up against other players and stuff like that, like in masses of players, like if you're locked in like that with everybody, right? So it was like the four of us, and I think we had one other player with us from the community, and like we were just locked, like that was not going anywhere, to the point that after, like, I don't remember exactly how long, I said to the ref, I was like, hey, do you want us to pull back? And he was like, yeah, please do that. So we pulled back, right? And so we let them have the flag, and then they, to advance the game. But like we were just so coordinated, so dialed in that it doesn't, in that event. Like if you have 15 players who are going by ones and twos, just attacking, like you're never going to make that progress. You need to have that coordination, and that's what, as a team, like we bring that to the table. And so even if individually we're not as good as many of the players we're going up against, because I do believe that's true. Like I think I'm good at airsoft, but I think that I'm playing against people who are significantly better. It's like I've said before, like, part of the reason that I wanted to make the Storm Riders is because I wanted to surround myself with people who are better than me at stuff, right? Because that way, that sort of helps me look better, because I'm surrounded by guys who are like hot shots, so that's great. But also it helps me grow, right? And that's what I've applied to in my life in general. That's why I run with Chris, because Chris is much better, much stronger, much faster than I am, and all this kind of stuff. Anyways, point is to say, like, we're going up against people who are good, but they just don't have that coordination in the same way that we've had, because we've been playing together for so long, right?
And
And we make a conscious effort to coordinate.
well, yeah, that's two things at once, right? Like we've been playing together for
Yeah.
ages, so there's sort of an understanding of like, yeah, I know, um, I know where people will be and what they'll be doing without asking them, because there's a plan.
Yeah.
We've been over this enough that it's not a problem. But there's also just the
But this
fact that
is,
like
yeah,
we have radios, we talk during play, we make an effort to communicate where
that's
we
such a
are,
good
where the
point.
opposing team is, and like one of the things that I definitely experienced during the op that was, like it's not the first time I've experienced, but it keeps being an interesting thing to me is um, players on the opposing team who like, okay, so they were approaching me and they were trying to be stealthy. Makes sense, right? There's a guy up high with a quite a good replica who's shooting a lot of BBs in your general direction. Let's minimize, let's get as close as we can to him before we start playing that game. Makes sense to me. Once they are there, though, like once you're pulling the trigger, I know where you are, right?
Yeah.
So not talking is completely useless. Being
Yeah.
loud is irrelevant. Like, when Jeremy's like, oh, I'm being loud, I'm being communicative, you can hear him halfway across the field. And like, that's not strictly speaking helpful, but it's also not a hindrance, right?
Yeah.
Once he's shooting, we all know where he is anyway. Who cares? Tell me where the targets are.
This happened today, actually, like, and during that game in particular, and I think there's somebody in the chat who was saying that they were there too. If I think about the other team, I couldn't hear them saying anything to each other, but we were talking all the time. And for the live stream, unfortunately, for some reason, I was muted, which is so stupid. But that's my bad. Whatever, we'll figure it out next year. But I kept saying, like, when we were doing this game, people next to me would say stuff about what they saw with the enemy. Like they would be like, there's one by the bus, there's two, on the berm behind the plastic tank. And whenever I heard that, I would just repeat it. I would say it out loud. I would shout it out loud. So other people in my vicinity who maybe didn't hear the same thing I heard would hear now the same thing I heard. I acted as a repeater, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And I think that's, you don't hear other people doing that, but it's so important to the situational awareness, because where I was with that hold on the front of the bus, I couldn't see the berm. I couldn't see the crow's nest. I couldn't see behind the oil tank. I couldn't see the buildings. I was focused on that flag. And yet, I kind of had an idea of where other players were because information was coming into my ears by people talking around me, right? And so I think that is something that hopefully the more people play objective based games, I think hopefully the other teams in the community will grow to start utilizing a lot of that same stuff, because individually their skills are really high. It's the coordination that needs to be worked on. And I think this is a really good segue into the other sort of thing that I want to talk about is, what we're looking at for events that are coming up, and what I'm really excited for. So I think in a previous episode, I think we talked about, or I think an episode that I recorded by myself solo to fill a gap, I talked about Operation Phantom Shield, which is going to be our November 2nd op. This is going to be like a 5.5 hour game. We're delaying the start by half an hour because everyone always complains about the 9 a.m. start. So I'm like, fine, you filthy animals, have 30 extra minutes, see if I care. And generally speaking, by like 2:30, like people are winding down anyway. So like it should be all right.
I'm good with that. It means I have, an extra 30 minutes to drink my coffee while I wait for people to show up.
Yeah.
Right.
But so in this event, though, I think communication and coordination is going to be really, really important, not from necessarily like a fighting perspective, because although that will likely happen, I can't imagine that at this airsoft game teams aren't going to shoot at each other. I'm sure it's going to happen. More importantly,
I'm bringing my LMG to have tea with the opposing team.
Yeah, but there are going to be like objectives and things to do that are not related to combat, or that are going to require interaction with NPCs and stuff like that. And so communication coordination is going to be really important for that to be able to happen.
That's cool.
So I'm
it's
hoping
weird
that
not to be in the know. I gotta say, like,
Yeah.
I don't hate it, but it is weird.
Yeah, especially for the NPC stuff, because you were so like invested in that in the past. But it's going to be really interesting. So I'm curious to see how the teams do with that, and hopefully they will rise to the occasion, because there's going to be a lot of different mechanics and stuff that are put in place. The missions aren't going to be the same for both teams. I mentioned that, I think, in the last video. Like, both teams are going to have their own op board, and it's going to be up to them to figure out how they complete their missions. And there absolutely is a scenario where both teams are capable of winning, right? If they complete their objectives in a particular way, both teams can fulfill their win conditions. I don't think that's likely. I think I mentioned that in the recording. I mentioned to people in the community. I don't think that's very likely to happen just by the nature of things, but it is possible. So I might be surprised. To be frank, I would be hella surprised if it did happen, but we'll see. But the point,
weird
I think,
stuff has happened. Like, we have
Yes.
run offs where it's like, oh, I didn't think that was achievable.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so those are a couple of things that I'm looking forward to seeing how the community reacts to. Although I'm excited because I know that a lot of the mechanics that we're including are things that people have given us positive feedback on so far. Right, the weapon classes is staying. People found that helpful.
I think that was
the camo,
super fun. Admitting
Yeah.
that, like, I was running one of the limited ones and that I had a blast partly because of that, but like, people were super positive about that.
But I mean, if you want to run an LMG, well, then build one, right? That's the thing. And also, have you spent all this time building a DMR and now you actually get the opportunity to use it in a way that's meaningful? Oh, cool,
Yeah,
right? Like, so it's it's a rewarding
built the
part of
LMG,
gameplay.
As I talked about earlier this summer, like, I ran my M27 at the DMR settings for a field for a couple of games, and that was a very, like, it's already pretty good running it on rifleman muzzle velocities. That was silly. I liked it.
The other thing about this op that, I mean, we're going to be doing like the medics with the bandages that we've done, and people really, really like that revive system. We are bringing back role playing, as I mentioned, like with NPCs and stuff. That's going to be a factor. One of the things is it's going to be slightly asymmetric, but not exactly, which I'm not going to tell any more than that because it's part of the discovery process for this game. The briefcase QR scanner situation people found fun.
That was
So
awesome. Like,
yeah, and so like what I will do, and the advantage that I have there is that like I can get Pat, for example, to print the QR codes like he did last time, and as long as he doesn't scan them, which I trust him not to do, he's not going to get any additional info from that.
yeah,
Which
like
means, or
ruining my own fun seems like a terrible idea.
yeah. So what that means is it really gives us a lot of flexibility to just prepare all the different props. What I'm really excited for, in addition to all of this with this game, is we're ratcheting up, in my opinion, how serious is not the right word that I mean to use here, but I'm going to use it just for the context of this conversation, and you can understand what I mean. We're including a lot more milsim lingo than we have in the past. So the ideas like startx, endx, op-ords, SOPs, ROEs, all the alphabet soup from the military, all the kinds of stuff that people
Jargon.
look to. What's that? The jargon, thank you. That people look to as part of the milsim. Not everyone. Some people, I'm sure, like Matt, could care less about all that military jargon. He's lived that life. Same thing for Cal. Like, that's their job. I don't think they particularly care.
But like,
But
we're here to play
other
make-believe,
people, well, yeah. And there are people in our community who are, interested in joining the Canadian Forces, the military. There are people who are members of the military who maybe are brand new. And so for them to see some of that jargon is going to be like, oh, cool. Like, this is legit, right? So that's one
sure.
part that I think that I'm excited to bring to the table that is going to make us, maybe it's maturity is the wrong word. Seriousness is probably not the right word. The maturity level of the event is sort of going up by one notch. So that's one thing. The second thing is I'm also really going to focus on these are the two teams that you can register for, and you must pick one, right? So you can pick green or you can pick tan. If you don't have green or tan camo, that's fine. We'll give you an armband, but you must pick one of those two teams, and places will be limited. So if you want to get on one particular team with your teammates, y'all have to register ahead of time because there's only going to be so many seats available on each team.
Register early, register often.
Yeah. The third thing is we are going to have a raffle. So we've never done that before because we've never had sort of prize support. However, this year, for this op, we will have prize support from one of our sponsors, Flamingo Custom Works.
Like, how cool is that just as a baseline thing? Like, just a company being like, hey guys, we're going to let you have cool shit to make people more excited. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Like,
so for those of you who are listening live, there is a podcast coming next week, so on Wednesday, with the owners, two of the co-owners of Flamingo Custom Works. For those of you who are listening to the recording, that podcast happened last week, so enjoy. But fundamentally, Flamingo Custom Works makes 3D printed stuff. In particular, they make 3D printed noise grenades. They also make 3D printed disposable launchable shells, either chalk shells or noise shells for 203s or similar. I think the tag-in launcher is the proper thing that they're intended for.
That noise you just heard is the sound of my wallet screaming.
They also make a particularly threaded is not the right word, but it's like a spiral barrel or fluted barrel. Is that the right word? For those, so that you can put it into any 203 launcher, so that they will accept the shells.
Nice. So yeah, I think it ends up being functionally being rifled, so that you're getting spin on the projectile that comes out.
Yeah, rifled barrel.
Cool.
And then they also have, now they don't manufacture this, but they do sell it, a 40 max propane adapter, which basically means that with that 40 max and the tube and their thing, any 203 you have now becomes a launcher, not just a tag-in launcher. This also does include...
Why you got to play me like this?
No, hang on, it gets better. This does also include the M72 law, because it functionally is a 203.
Alrighty.
Right?
If only I knew someone who had an M72 law.
Right. Now, Flamingo are amazing. They are sending me a care package with every single one of their products. And I'm going to be doing some reviewing for them of their particular products. But more
I
importantly,
foresee YouTube videos in which I laugh maniacally in our future.
the reason though that that's so cool, and we were having this conversation, Antoine, one of the owners, they're based out of Quebec. Antoine and I were talking, and he was like, well, you don't use noise grenades at your field because you're concerned about hearing protection and stuff like that, which I think is legit. He's like, so I'm going to send you every single one of our reusable grenades, because some use a shotgun primer and some use like plastic, like gun caps, basically,
Oh, so like
right?
Capcom.
Cap gun caps, yeah, exactly, right? Those little rings.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they
That's cool.
both produce, and each of them have two versions. Like one has holes in it where the flame is open, and the other one vents the flame out. And on the pop cap, there's not really any flame, but there's holes or no holes. So they all have different varying noise level, from like basically loudest to quietest, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to work with the outdoor field manager to identify, okay, which ones of these are we actually comfortable with, right? If there was a 13-year-old kid who's a renter in one of the buildings and the grenade went off with them, which one of these would, like, obviously it's going to dazzle them a little bit, but is actually not going to cause any hearing loss, right?
So,
or potentially any hearing damage.
So what you're saying is we're going to play a game of which of these loud things startles Pat the most at some point.
Well, more like Mike, the frontline manager, because I want him to feel
Oh no,
comfortable with whatever.
I mean, I meant that as separately. Sorry, you're going to do that thing where you establish what is appropriate for the field, and also we're going to play a game where we find out which one of these startles Pat the most.
Yes, yeah, and we'll take your hearing protection off for sure. So that's going to be cool. But the cool bit is that once we know which ones are the ones that we are acceptable, I'm thinking that the shotgun primer with the open holes might be too loud, but the primer that's closed might be okay, and the cap guns should almost certainly be fine. But then once we know which models we're okay with, they're going to send us a whole bunch for us to raffle off, right?
That's super
So the
cool.
raffle will include that. I am also working with a few other different people to see if we can add some other stuff to the raffle. And so if you register early for the event, you'll get one ticket. If you come to the pre-night briefing, you'll get a second ticket. And then when you show up for the event, you will get a third ticket. So if you only show up, you only get one. Whereas if you want all three, you got to do all three.
That's a good incentive.
Right?
I like it.
So again, I think that's ratcheting up our maturity level for this event. So it's like, not only are we having registration, not only are you going to get like a legit op or document with like legit military jargon and all this kind of stuff, but on top of that, you're also going to have prize support for this event. And it's a raffle. So it doesn't really matter who wins or loses. What matters is you show up, you take part in the raffle. And also, if you don't stay for the raffle, you don't stay till the end of the event, you get bupkis. Like, you have to be there to take your prize, right? So hopefully this will encourage people to register early, come to the events, make sure that they take part in all the pregame stuff. And then when you show up, you get, you stay there for the day, and you collect your prize at the end. If you do win, right?
It's I don't think it's a thing that anyone's confused about, but like, we want people to come play.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And like, there's lots of games that we've had where people just leave, right? And like, I don't want people to do that as much as possible. It's like, if the only incentive is, well, I could win a prize at this raffle, then great, right?
Yeah, I mean,
now,
like,
are we like AMS giving away like 20 different guns? No, but also our budget not the same. So at least this is a good first step in that direction. So I'm really excited about that. The other thing that I'm super, super excited, I think I've mentioned it sort of briefly in passing to some people, but currently I'm working with at this event that we're going to have in November, the Canadian Armed Forces will be there. They will be. I've been working with someone in the at the reserve detachment here, a sergeant who's been super, super nice. Basically, I was explaining to him like, hey, airsoft is like your best recruiting potential, and I would like to work with you to create a relationship whereby you get recruiting opportunities. Because for the Canadian Armed Forces, one of the things that they want to do is make sure that people who are potentially interested in joining the military get a chance to talk with Canadian Armed Forces members so that they can interact about, hey, this is what my career is like. This is what I do. Like, yes, I'm in infantry. No, I'm not in infantry. I'm, logo, or I'm EMICOM, or I'm whatever trade, right? And they learn about that. And that is a really good way to drive recruitment. Yeah. And I said, well, I mean, you will never have more of a captive
knowing
audience.
What people do in jobs is pretty good in terms of making you interested in doing them.
Well, yeah, and you will never have a more not captive audience, but certainly, but receptive audience than the airsoft crowd. Like
Definitely.
we're obviously interested in the military lifestyle. We are attending a milsim event specifically because we are interested in that kind of stuff. For many of us, the idea of like being assigned a recce patrol is like, oh my god, that's the greatest thing in the world. Like, so there is already an interest. So I feel like the affinity is there. So the idea was to start building sort of relationships so that next year we would be able to host an airsoft event on Canadian Forces land at one of their training facilities. Now, the training facilities that we have access to here are not like the training facilities in the United States. There are no structures. There are no. It's like it's a lot of open field. But there is one here, not far from St. John's. It's actually in city limits. That is, a 1.2 square kilometer, 1.2 like diameter, kilometer diameter square, basically. So it's a very large area. It's like, I don't know, 10, 15 times the size of Frontline. And so,
That's
is
pretty
it
cool.
ideal? Like, it would be great if it had buildings. It would be great if it had like MRAPs and a crashed, C-130 Hercules. That would be great, but it doesn't. It's an area, but the reserves use it to practice like maneuver warfare, section attacks, like movement patrols, etc. So that space would actually be ideal for us. Now, we're working on getting the permission to use the space currently. Um, but with this relationship with the Canadian Forces, I feel like there's an opportunity for us to do something bigger, right? To use space, use bigger space with permission to create an event that is really truly more of an advanced milsim with space to maneuver, space to go and like have objectives be consequentially far from other places. Like this event, this marker that you're at is further away than your airsoft gun can shoot. Would be great,
Yeah.
right?
And like that's
Um,
very difficult to achieve at Frontline.
Yes, yeah, because again, like once the game starts, everybody meets in the middle. But at like this training facility, nobody's really been there aside from some of the members who may have been there for work, and their perspective on it was very different than if they show up as an airsofter. So I'm really, really hopeful for this partnership to get off the ground because I think it will lend a lot of, again, like gravitas to what we're doing. Like it's going to bring the maturity level up one notch even further. And to come back to what we were talking about before, getting people to coordinate and work together as a team will become even more consequential at a game like that. And we wouldn't be doing this by ourselves. Like, of course, the Canadian Forces would be a partner on this, but so would Frontline. I'm not interested in running a game and saying to Frontline, oh, well, sorry, no thanks. Like, Frontline should be a partner. They should be a vendor there. They should be providing rentals and air and all this kind of stuff, which they can do. And they can, generate revenue for themselves on that. Meanwhile, we can keep whatever our fee is at the minimum to cover whatever the costs of running the game are, the props, and so on, but give people like a legit like 8, 10, 12 hour. Like there's no reason we couldn't start the game at like 9 and end at 9, or start at 10 and end at 8, or something, right? To give people like a long time in the field the opportunity to do like combat patrol missions and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to get off the ground. And once we do that once, it will make things a lot easier in the future as well, which I'm
Yeah, I mean
very, very excited
the
for.
first time jumping through those hoops is definitely going to be the most complicated because
Mhm.
if the people who are in charge of deciding who gets to jump through the hoops already know, hey, okay, we did this, it went well, it was good, they were professional, sick, right?
Yeah.
And you know, at the end of the day, from my point of view, stuff like that is sort of I think it's very ambitious, but like in a really positive way.
Hmm.
Um, and I think perhaps like speaking as the person who I guess is often going like, can we actually do that? Um, and being concerned about the practicality of this stuff, like this feels very, very achievable.
Yeah.
Um, in a way that like some of the things we've talked about as stuff we'd like to do in the past haven't necessarily. Um,
Yeah.
but it also sounds extremely cool.
Yeah. And like I have high hopes because I think that right now, at least in Canada, the Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadian Army Reserve in particular is really looking to push recruitment. So I think that partnership makes a lot of sense. And I think, as well, we've talked about, could we host events at other places other than Frontline? And I think if you were to approach a business, for example, that had land somewhere, private land, and say, hey, we're looking at hosting an event on your land, we're looking at renting the facility, whatever that looks like. It's us and our partner, the like federal government, Department of National Defense. It's like, oh, okay, so these people are actually legit. In the same way that, if you're trying to, organize a fundraiser, for example, hey, we're raising funds for like a charity or something. That opens a lot of doors because you're associating yourself with something that people believe in, right?
And
So
it
yeah,
at the moment, like, not that I don't think this is awesome, but like at the moment, as a group of guys running events, our resume is stuff at Frontline. And that's wicked for working with Frontline. But if we're going to someone else and going, hey, can we run something? And they don't know us or Frontline, because Frontline, does cater to a relatively niche hobby set, right?
mm-hmm.
Then that's going to be a lot less effective, like you pointed out, than going like, yeah, we're working with the Canadian Forces. Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. And just to close this out, I think that the reason that I wanted to sort of bring this up on Community Day in particular is because, well, firstly, it's about our airsoft community here. But really, all of this started because John and I went to Iron Horse.
Yep.
And when we went to Iron Horse, I realized that airsoft can be bigger than what we had done at Frontline, and airsoft partnerships with organizations, with companies and stuff like that really just come from, okay, what is possible? What kind of conversation have we had? And naturally, there's a lot of different places, different people that you're going to talk to who are not interested. Who are just like, you know what, that's not within our comfort zone. I reached out to one particular area here. They run a mine. We did a photo shoot at this talc mine many years ago. I reached out to them. I'm like, this is what I would like to do. Is this something that you're comfortable with? And they were very kind, but replied, you know what, unfortunately, that's not something we're comfortable with. That's fine. Like, that is going to happen. But the reality is, like, eventually, as you continue asking, you will come across people who will potentially say yes, or who will at least entertain the notion and will want to have a conversation about it. And when that happens, you have to be ready to have the conversation, right? So, like, just to give you an example with people who I'm working with on this, they're like, okay, well, what's your insurance strategy? What is your environmental impact plan? What is your human waste plan? Like, all these kinds of things. You have to be ready to answer these questions, which thankfully I have answers for that, so that's great, which helps propel the conversation. But to come back to it, I think fundamentally, just playing at Guardian, I was like, oh, this only happened because someone at American Milsim was like, hey, Guardian Center, we have an event that we'd like to host at your facility. How would that work? And Guardian said, well, this is how much we charge. We've never held an airsoft event. And that's a relationship that they continue to have to manage even to this day, because some of the events don't go so well and stuff gets damaged. And they're like, okay, what's the plan? Are we able to be invited back? And some organizations burn those bridges. And I'm not looking to do that at all. Like, I want to make sure that it works well.
And I think, it can't be understated, like, how much benefit, we have reaped. I personally am reaping right now, like, as you work on this, and as I try to provide support where I can, from you guys going to that Milsim game. And that only happened because of how awesome the community we built around this podcast is. Like, partly because it would be difficult to go and not have replicas,
Yeah.
like, as a baseline piece of practicum. But, like, I know one of the things that incentivized you guys to go was meeting people who we've gotten to know and who we know are awesome, from our Discord community. So we have the situation where, in a really practical, pragmatic way, we're trying to grow the airsoft community here, and that's always been a goal. But I think you guys going to Iron Horse gave you a much better framework for, like, what's actually possible for people to do.
Yes.
And without it necessarily being a thing where you as an individual spend a whole dirty pile of money, which has been one of the, like, concerns before.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was. And to be clear, we did spend a whole dirty pile of money,
Well, I meant like in terms of, like, a event we're planning in the future. Not yes,
exactly.
Traveling is expensive.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and I think, again, coming back to the community, I think that fundamentally, like, is what made that possible, and what makes it sort of just shifts your perspective. Like, when you go to something like that, And I think that probably happens with a lot of people when the first time they attend an event of that magnitude, what regardless of which community they come from. But really opened a lot of doors, and I'm hoping, and like not just doors between people, but doors in my own brain. Like you were saying before, like this is ambitious, but it's ambitious in an achievable way. Whereas, 6 months ago, I would have said, well, there's no sense in doing that. That's never going to happen, right? And through the jigs and reels, talking to different people, Cal and his colleagues, fundamentally his colleagues, right? Saying, yeah, this is possible. This, these are the people you want to talk to, and them giving me the time of day. Like they didn't have to do that, but here we are, right?
And like,
Um, so yeah,
I think arguably one of the things that's really relevant there is, like to me, going, hey, Canadian Forces, you guys are recruiting. This could be a recruiting tool. Are you interested? Is thinking outside of the box that I live in, right? Like that's not my normal approach set for man. I'd like to organize an airsoft event.
mm-hmm.
Um, but it's also funny to think about in the sense that like we have points of contact there who can tell us who to go talk to.
Yeah,
Um, and the jobs of those people is to try in and of itself to find new and interesting ways to approach recruiting, and we're offering them that. So like
yeah.
in retrospect, yeah, this seems like a pretty good idea.
So yeah, I think I'm very excited. I think that it's going to be, I'm hoping that it gets off the ground. I still have some work to do and some things to file away with them. And it's the government, so it could take a while. I'm hoping to host it next year, in the spring, ideally. But who knows? That might not be possible. Or like the sergeant I was working with said, like you could get an answer in a week, or it could be 52 weeks. And I was like, understood. But we'll see. Ultimately, very excited. And yeah, so that's really all I really want to talk about for this in particular. I just want to take another minute at the end of this episode to once again shout out the amazing people that we have in our community, not just the Storm Riders Foreign Legion who attended with us at Iron Horse, who went to Border War or Battle for LA, um, but everyone in the Discord. Like whether it's someone like KSK Kevin who just showed up, or Huck, or people who've been there for a really long time, like Bench. Um, just the sheer amount of support that people provide other people in a non-judgmental, non-asshole sort of way is atypical for airsoft social media, I would say,
Yep.
and speaks volumes to the sort of the character that people have brought and understood. Like this is the space that we've tried to create.
And
Um,
this is,
we
the quality that like airsofters are capable of generating in terms of a
Yes,
welcoming, awesome community. Um, it is. I'm really proud to know you guys and to be able to chat with you guys, and I'm very, very appreciative of being able to ask and get cool suggestions, such as, "Hey, where can I get boxing? Have you tried this? No, but I'm gonna." Like, it's
yeah.
fantastic.
And like there's no, we've said it before, airsoft is a big tent, there's space for everyone. And I think that's so true even when you look at our Discord, when there are people who are more into the milsim versus more into the speedsoft, people who are doing crazy stuff, like we talked about, in the timeline, we talked about Flub in France doing all kinds of crazy stuff with like RC, thinking about working with Zippy in Canada about like digital night vision setups that they could create themselves with parts that they buy online, like collaborating on stuff. People working on like, oh well, we could do a bingo for call your hits for the episode. And I don't know if that happened. I don't know if the bingo sheets were circulated. If so, Marco Polo, just to make sure we're covering that base off. But like just the fact that there is this interest in not just going out there and being like this is how cool I am, but okay, hey, like let's learn about other people who are doing airsoft and how are they doing it and how could that work for me, or vice versa. So it's very heartening, especially given the sort of the quagmire that social media can be just in general. To have a community of people who is just so, and I have to laugh. Like we have a team of moderators, and the kind of things that we have to moderate in the grand scheme of things, it's like every now and then we get a spam attack, but like it's very very limited. Like we barely have any work on a given in any given week, And that's not an invitation for any of you to start creating work for us, mind you. But like fundamentally, like there's just, everyone is just so kind and welcoming and thoughtful and considerate of everybody else. It's just such a privilege
How
to be
many
part of
groups of
that. It
people do
really
you really
is.
have on the internet that are like unproblematic?
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
So guys, thank you so much for being part of our community. Thank you so much for being part of Community Day. If you're listening to the stream right now, thank you so much for all your interaction, your positivity over the course of the last year, and thank you for listening. We love Pat and I love making this show. We love creating content for you guys. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next year and all the different things that we're going to be able to showcase with you guys, and the moments we're going to be able to spend together.
you guys make a extremely fun hobby more fun. Like, what else can I say?
Yeah, point blank. Thank you so much for listening, guys. That's all we've got for you this week. Happy Community Day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Have a good
Take
week.
care, everyone.